Hello, we're live. We're back in the bleak midwinter for me, but a beautiful Indian summer for Nick. It's not a full pod this week, but another WGTQ+A. Nick strikes back, and we're back on YouTube to a live little audience. So it's been a while now, Nick. How are you doing? And how was yours and Moses's, most importantly, first Christmas?
Hey mate, yeah, I had a fantastic Christmas with family. Had the grandparents down, and Moses was perfectly behaved and a real joy, which made me a very proud father. Um, yeah, really good Christmas, thanks. So just to say, of course, we are here. Got the assist. You can find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL. You can use Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you'd like to listen to the pod and subscribe. So, what are we talking about today?
Cool. So we're on for what, 30 to 45 minutes, just this New Year's Eve, just talk about our teams, market forces, answer some questions from our lovely Twitter following, which has just reached 18,000, Nick, which is absolutely ridiculous given how we started, 18 months ago? I can't believe that we've gotten there. And we just also want to say thanks to everybody who tuned into the FPL show this week when I was on with the experts, with David, with Jules, and with James to talk FPL. It was really good fun, even though it was quite tiring because it was on at midnight. But yeah, just a quick kind of WGTQ+A today.
Sounds perfect. Yeah, 18,000 followers in 18 months is absolutely fantastic. So thanks for all the guys who've been following and listening to the pod, and I hope you enjoy it. So yeah, and thanks for all the questions this game week, guys. So shall we start then with the game week reviews? So what happened for you this game week? What's happened in the past few? Because it's been a few since we last podded.
I mean, do I need to talk about this, Nick? I mean, I don't really want to be honest with you. It's been pretty poor, as you know well. I've been complaining at you and many people about what's been going on, and I mean, it does happen every now and again. It's been quite a downturn in my fortune, shall we say, from a season high of inside top 50k in game week 12. I'm now lingering around 400k, so I've increased my rank by tenfold. And the higher the rank, the better you are, right? No, it's very, very annoying. I think selling Salah was obviously a bit of a mistake, and then after that, it just kind of went downhill. Like, I think every week I've been set up and thinking, yeah, I've got a really good team, and I do have a good team full of good players. It's just for whatever reason I've been missing out on those one or two players who have been pushing things home. Not having Salah has obviously been an absolute pain in the posterior, and from that point onwards, it's just been quite bad. Um, you know, as you kind of tend to say to me, is that you've got to keep calm and follow the template. I don't think I've been quite doing that. Like, I've been, it's obviously not a mitigation point because everyone is busy, but I have been very busy over Christmas, work-wise and family-wise. Even my Twitter output, Nick, is diminished by 33%. I'm only averaging 70 tweets a day rather than 100. But it's just kind of, I felt like I've been away from it in some ways, and that has definitely impacted my rank. I've not been as close as I could have been. I haven't done as well as I should have done. But by the by, that's just the way it is. I'm hoping 2019 is better. In contrast, you have absolutely smashed it. How are you doing?
Well, yeah, I've done pretty well, to be honest. It hasn't not been the worst Christmas in terms of my FPL rank and my game weeks. So yeah, I've had quite a few small green arrows. Only one red actually in the last 7. And that was actually caused by my lack of coverage in that Everton Spurs game, where I only had Luca Dean, who got a -1, and that was a bit of a disaster game for me, not having any of those Spurs players. But I sorted it out the next game week by bringing in Son Heung-min, who smashed it again. And Luca Dean more than made up for it by his 17 points in that brace in the next game. So yeah, a few sort of savvy decisions, I guess, that have paid off for me in the most recent game weeks. Sterling's sort of like a 1-week punt for me, which didn't work out, but I ditched him immediately for Son. I also sold for Fraser for Paul Pogba this game week, who was excellent for me. I think one of the critical decisions that sort of stood me out against some of the other guys is that I kept Salah, and I've captained him for the last couple of game weeks, and that's really brought in the points as well. So yeah, 81 in game week 19, 65 this game week, which is pretty decent, I think. And breaking into the top 50k, yeah, it's not been bad at all, to be honest. So very contrasting fortunes between both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a few kind of sliding doors moments, haven't there? Like, we were talking about my decision to bring in De Bruyne off stream, and bringing in Son that week would have been a lot better. And then 2 weeks ago, to top it all off, Martial or Pogba was the choice in front of me, and I thought, you know what? If I get Martial in, I've got 0.6 million to spend on further transfers forward. So I bought Martial in, and guess what? He has a dodgy Coco van over Christmas. Misses training, doesn't show up, isn't in the Lowry Hotel despite living just 5 minutes away, and all hell breaks loose basically. So it's been pretty chastening. So what are you doing this week then, Nick? What are your transfers in mind, and who's your captain going to be for Game Week 21? Before we get into the questions, or market forces first, then questions.
Yeah, that's fine. So frustratingly, actually, due to the price changes, I'm 0.1 short now of the key move that I wanted to make this game week, and that was Sané to Hazard. So Sané didn't play today, which was really annoying. Where he came off the bench, got 1 point, which doubly annoying, I guess. But yeah, he didn't play today, and Manchester City have not been the best in the most recent game weeks. They've been definitely out of form. So I was going to ditch Sané because they've got Liverpool, and I was going to bring in Eden Hazard if possible for Chelsea's nice home match against Southampton. But unfortunately, yeah, I'm 0.1 short, so I've been looking at a few ways of how to fund it. Very, very, very painful. Very painful. Yeah, I was tempted to take a -4 this game week and do that move, but I resisted taking the hits because I was worried I was going to end up in this situation. But then Hazard blanked anyway, so kind of got away with that. But I mean, there's a couple of options out there. I guess one is perhaps selling Success and getting in Camera or Quain or something like that to fund it, which is a bit of a whole. Yeah, I don't really like that. It's sort of like a single transfer hit. And then the other option, and it depends on Snodgrass actually, because Snodgrass, I was very tempted to rage transfer him out after his 0-pointer today. But there's rumours that he was actually substituted for non-tactical reasons. So it depends if he's sort of declared injured for the next fixture. Maybe I'll turn him into Brooks, because Brooks has been sort of the informed Bournemouth player, and they've got Watford next. So that's an option perhaps. Of a -4, doing Sané to Hazard, Snodgrass to Brooks. But if I don't do that, I'll then end up perhaps rolling the transfer, because the week later I'm going to have to sell Son. They've got Manchester United, but if I sell him, I can turn him into perhaps Felipe Anderson or Richarlison, who I haven't owned, and then turn Sané into Hazard without taking a hit. So that's another option that I'm weighing up, is just rolling the transfer, holding on to Sané for another game week, and hoping that Hazard doesn't smash it against Southampton.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Like with Sané, it was just again very unlucky that Pep decided to Pep to some extent there. Like as I mentioned on the FPL show, like he'd had 3 big chances in the last 2 game weeks, and he was topping that metric alongside Deulofeu, who got another assist. And those 8 minutes on the pitch were so worth it, weren't they? Cheers, Pep. I mean, it cost me 1 point, but I'm sure that cost lots of people. Like Jimenez off the bench, or Doherty off the bench, or something like that. So I can see why that would have been very, very annoying for a lot of people. I guess for me this week, I'm sold. KDB is gone. Pogba's in. So I've got Man United double up with Pogba and Martial now. I think that might just be worthwhile, because to be honest with you, they've really revolutionised the game, haven't they? The Man United midfielders coming in, actually bothering to show up now. Mourinho's gone. He's shouting, as Partridge FPL said, respect, respect, respect at the TV now. But OGS has really changed things there and really galvanised them, hasn't he? And having 2 of them, I think, is probably a decent move. I'm probably going to bring Hazard in myself, just because of the next 2 games being so good. Like Southampton at home, I think that's very likely to be a bit of a massacre, isn't it? And Newcastle at home as well in game week 22. Those are 2 very, very good games, and 2 captainable games for Martial. It'll be very interesting to see what your views are actually, Nick, later on whether I should be looking at him or Aubameyang for the armband next week. But I'm probably going to do that and go Cityless for the time being. We'll see what happens after the Liverpool game. But for me as a no seller team owner, a non-seller owner at the moment, I think it's probably time to be bringing him back in. But I guess most importantly, so I'm probably part of the market forces, having brought in Pogba. How are the market forces looking at the moment, Nick? How are people reacting to the game week that's just gone?
So yeah, there has actually been a bit of an explosion in terms of the market forces. I think it's been the most frantic market forces I've seen perhaps this season with Paul Pogba, especially. There's just been droves and droves of people transferring him in, and unbelievably, he's actually already had over 239,000 transfers in at time of recording, which is quite ridiculous considering the match only finished perhaps four or so hours ago. So there's just been an absolute, charge of people thinking Pogba's the man to bring in. And, he's just been smashing it, hasn't he, since Marino's left? His 3 assists and then a brace, and now in this game week, a brace and an assist. And United's fixtures are still pretty reasonable. Newcastle up next, then they've got Spurs, but then it's Brighton at home, Burnley at home, Leicester away. So, there's potential for returns, and he's very easily, very kindly priced at 8.1 or 8.2. So people aren't having to spend a lot of money to bring in this guy. But, of course, there's those sacrificial lambs. There are always those sacrificial lambs every game week. Sané is the main man at the moment, having been transferred out. A lot of people like myself annoyed that he didn't play. And, as you said, the underlying stats are good for him, but he just hasn't been returning in the most recent game weeks. Blank against Crystal Palace, blank against Leicester, and now 1 pointer against Southampton. And they've got Liverpool up next, so it's a very tough fixture. So he's had over 76,000 transfers out. Sterling, for similar reasons, also being transferred out en masse, with 62,000 transfers out at time of recording. And also some of the other cheaper players within the midfield, Fraser and Richarlison, also suffering heavy transfers out for perhaps Pogba, but also Felipe Anderson, who, despite a blank this game week, had 61,000 transfers in this game week. So Fraser's had over 59,000 time recording, Richarlison over 56,000, but Felipe Anderson seems to be attracting a fair amount of attention still, with 61,000 transfers in, despite the blank against Burnley.
Hang on, so 61 transfers in for 61,000 transfers in for Fanderson, but 39,000 transfers out. It's one of those things and one of those times, isn't it? Where managers are kind of almost just flaying around, aren't they? Not really too sure what to do in this midfield, mid-price bracket. I mean, I completely understand to some extent what people are doing with Richarlison, but if you watch the game, it perhaps wasn't the game for him. But he was very close on a number of occasions. He is still top, out of position, of course, for pen box touches over the last 6. He's also top for attempts over the last 6. He's also top for attempts in the box over the last 6. I mean, Everton don't have a top 6 team that they face until game week 27. They play Man City. They've got a run of fixtures involving Leicester, Bournemouth, Southampton, Huddersfield, Wolves, and Watford. These are all games in which he could return. And I'm a bit, I don't know, I'm a bit skeptical about people moving him out. I can understand perhaps why people might be looking at Felipe Anderson and thinking, oh, okay, well, I can probably just about afford Pogba here. I've got to do it. But removing Richarlison does seem a bit reactionary. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it does seem a little bit reactionary. He's definitely on my watch list still. I only owned him 1 week this season where he decided to get a -2 because that game week he chose to headbutt someone. But ever since then, I have been thinking about how I can fit Richarlison in, what my Richarlison plan is to a certain extent. And I've kind of just continually actually ignored him and just hoped that he wouldn't return. And generally, I've kind of half got away with it some game weeks. Other game weeks, I've been punished. So he's one of those that I think is definitely worth owning. I think he's definitely a hold. If you do own him, I wouldn't really look about selling him for sure. And I'm still considering him as an option, perhaps for bringing him in. But I think it is just this mad rush of Pogba that seems to be driving people a bit crazy. People are looking at him.
Yeah.
Who can I sacrifice? Richarlison, yeah, he'll do to get Pogba in. So yeah, it's a bit nuts. The other one actually that's being transferred in the midfield, worth mentioning, is Mo Salah. So he's had over 58,000 transfers.
Oh, Nick was very excited by Mo Salah being transferred, and he appears to have left the stream. Wow. 13.2 million pounds, 58,000 transfers in. That's pretty crazy. Let's see where Nick is and see if he's excited by these moves. There he is. What happened? Are you just too excited by the transfers out by transferring of Salah? You're just like, right,
I'm trying to navigate tabs and accidentally closed the wrong one. Bit of a sham. I'm looking at the numbers whilst talking. It's not just straight out my head. I just have to point it out.
Exactly. Lee apparently just said that some reaction to Salah. And I think that's.
I'm just quoting numbers off the top of my head all the time. Yeah. Anyway, live broadcast and all. So Mo Salah, 58,000 transfers in. I'm actually thinking it's very interesting with him because obviously they got Manchester City up next, which is a tougher game. And we've seen that City have been continually conceding each game week. Haven't had a clean sheet actually since game week 13, so there's every chance that Salah could return again. But perhaps a lot of managers like yourself are actually thinking, I'm going to give it one more game week before I bring it in. So we could see a massive resurgence in Mo Salah purchases after this game week. So this could be like, people getting him in early, hoping, just saying, right, it's Manchester City, but here's Mo Salah. He's continually smashing. I can't afford to not have him in anymore. But I reckon after game week 21, we might see a massive rise in terms of his transfers on the market forces.
I wouldn't be too surprised by that. Like Salah's now the second highest owned player after Alonso. I think there's 1.3% in it when we looked at it earlier on today. It's probably going to be about 1% now. Maybe if there's some Alonso sales, that might happen. You're right about Man City. I think anecdotally and just from watching them, they have a long period, don't they, when they keep clean sheets, and then after that they just go into this kind of tailspin where they allow one chance, and that one chance does go in, like we saw today, we saw the other day as well. I mean, they are currently, they're not doing too bad, like middle of the form table for defending, but in terms of big chances conceded, which is what I kind of look at, because that tends to be how good your defense is at stopping those kind of point blank chances. They're level with the likes of Burnley, level with the likes of Cardiff, and level with the likes of Arsenal. So all rubbish teams there, and they're not doing particularly well in terms of that. And I'm very glad I sold Ederson. And we got that precious save point, didn't we, from Fabianski this week, Nick, which was obviously worthwhile. I was a bit annoyed actually because I was looking at Etheridge a little bit. I didn't do it. I wasn't looking at him enough to bring him in, but yeah, he then went on to save the penalty and record a monster score this week again. Sliding doors. Sliding doors.
I'm sure you're looking at Lossell as well, weren't you?
Oh no, I definitely wasn't looking at Lossell, dear me. 4.4. I mean, they're terrible, aren't they? 17 big chances conceded for Huddersfield, alongside Luca Dean's Everton. So yeah, not particularly encouraging. Right, should we get on to the questions then, Nick? And the first one this week is from Mr. WP. He's back from his short-lived FPL retirement. He jacked it in after dropping 20k places, but he came back after a 50-point game week to ask us simply this: should Kane go? A lot of people obviously looking at Harry Kane after the last game against Wolves, of course, didn't have a single penalty area touch, had one shot, it went in. The rest of the game, good link-up play, but that was kind of it. And people looking at him and thinking, well, especially if most people who own Kane don't own Salah, so you're thinking, well, 12.5, whatever it is for Kane, 13.2 for Salah, I can probably make that leap. Is it worth doing? As a Spurs fan, Nick, what's your assessment of Kane, and should people be looking to come off him if they don't own him?
I don't think it's the right moment really to be selling Kane if you do own him. I think he's actually showing pretty decent form in terms of the attacking returns, and he does have Cardiff up next. Doesn't feel like the right game week to be selling him, to be honest. He's got 4 goals and 2 assists in last 4, which really isn't that bad. 13 goals, 5 assists over the last 20 game weeks, so over the season, so nearly return every game week. And in terms of the underlying stats, in terms of shots, he's second for all forwards with 64, 32 of which have been on target, which is more than any other forward. And even though his XG in the last game was ridiculously low, he still managed to score a sort of world-class goal out of nowhere. I guess, of course, with his price, we'd like to have braces, lots of hat-tricks, which haven't materialised this season, but we do know that from previous seasons that he has it in his locker, could do it any time against any club, really. And Cardiff have done well this season. They kept a few clean sheets, but they also conceded 5 against United, 5 against Manchester City, 4 against Liverpool, and 4 against Chelsea. And Spurs only beat them 1-0 at home, but you could easily see them get absolutely pummeled this weekend or this midweek. And I wouldn't be surprised. I think it'd be dangerous to sell Kane at this particular moment in time, and especially if you're looking to fund the likes of Salah, who's got Manchester City. I'd give it at least another week. But even after that, after Spurs play Man U, they play Fulham, Watford, Newcastle. So all quite nice fixtures. So perhaps it's not the best strategy to sell him. I don't own him, but I am scared of him still.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised by that. I mean, the fact is that if you look at Spurs' fixtures, if he was returning, like Salah is now, like I think a lot of the time before, obviously he's recently turned to a god, which coincided with me selling him. So maybe, I'm to blame or to be credited with igniting the fire beneath the Egyptian king. if Kane was getting those sorts of scores, he would be the sort of man that we bring in and sticking in. What is interesting, if you are the sort of person who favours home fixtures, is that Kane and Spurs have 3 home games in a row between game weeks 24 and 26. They have Watford, Newcastle, and Leicester at home. If that is at White Hart Lane, new White Hart Lane, if that is ever built, the toilet seat, then he may well be the man to own during that period. I've kept Kane this week. It was a very close run thing between removing him, putting Jimenez in, and then using that, and then later on using the funds left over from that to buy a Salah next week, or buying in Pogba. Went for Kane. Went for Pogba in. But it is quite difficult, isn't it? Looking at the stats and looking at how he was playing, where he was playing, with Son and Ali basically the strikers and Kane as the attacking midfielder, you've got to be wondering about that at 12.5, 12.6. And if you aren't getting those double figure hauls, I think they will come. There'll be 1 or 2 towards the end of the season. I know it sounds a bit flimsy, but it is because it is Kane. But you are probably going to be wondering, is there better value for money elsewhere? Like in terms of the shots data, like you quoted the overall, but over the last 6, you've got the likes of Mitrovic, you've got the likes of Raul Jimenez keeping up with him, especially for shots in the box and penalty box touches as well. You've got a lot of players who are doing a lot better than Kane is. You've even got Marcus Rashford doing better than him, Rolf Zaha doing better than him, and the likes of Depoitre doing better than him. So all these things are a little bit worrying, aren't they?
Yeah, perhaps, but we know that even though Mitrovic or even Depoitre is getting as many goal attempts, we know that Kane is a lot more clinical with his shots, and that's why he's the one that's competing for the Golden Boot currently compared to Mitrovic and Jimenez. I mean, Mitrovic had an easy game but still didn't manage to get a goal. He does have the best sort of underlying stats in terms of goal attempts, but you've got to look at like how many were actually on target, and Kane is leading that way in terms of shots on target. We know that Kane can score out of nowhere, and that's illustrated by the goal he scored this game week. And he's got 13 goals. Aubameyang's got 13. Mitrovic has only 8. I don't think Depoitre, the other person you mentioned, has even scored at all. Otherwise, I'd probably mentioned it as part of my zombie team review. So I think you can quote lots of stats, but I think it's the key metrics that we got to review. And Kane is top for those key metrics across all forwards. I think it's the only thing that's scary. Is tough about Kane is his cost. And if we look at like the Jimenez, like you mentioned, he's half the price, and you can free up 6 billion. And when we're talking about midfielders, you got to compare Kane to some of the other midfielders. He is close to matching the stats, but if you want to have Salah, Hazard, and Sterling, which would make a really strong midfield, you probably have to sacrifice Kane.
No, that definitely makes sense. So I think that probably segues us very well into the question that FPL Prince, FPL Stephen, and how many hundreds and thousands of managers, including me, was it, buying Pogba, would ask. It's is Pogba essential? Which is obviously quite an interesting one. So you mentioned to me earlier on, didn't you, that Pogba's stats are pretty good in terms of creativity and also in terms of goal threat. So we've obviously not got the data quite updated for the match that's just happened, but he was doing rather well, wasn't he, in terms of basically everything. Interestingly, since Mourinho left, a very interesting post-match interview, wasn't it? Who was asked, "So Paul, what's changed?" And he said, "I don't know. We're playing a bit differently." So, I mean, it's your first week as a Pogba owner, Nick. Do you think it's one of those players that may well be a long-term hold?
Well, we'll have to see with Paul Pogba. I mean, he is definitely one of those characters where, he might be in form right now, but it just takes one sort of argument with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and he might, throw his toys out the pram, training room bust up, and we don't see him again till the end of the season, where he's sent on loan to Juventus. So I think it's very tough with Pogba. Obviously, at the moment, he looks brilliant. He's absolutely smashing it, and a massive upturn in form since Mourinho left, which is clearly not a coincidence at all, is it? But
No.
but yeah, it is a bit of a joke, to be honest, with this character. But at the end of the day, we've got to look at him as an FPL asset. And currently, as an asset to own in FPL, he does look like the man to get in this game week. And that's why people are bringing him in as droves. 3 assists, 2 goals and assist, and last 3, smashing it, absolutely smashing it. Looks really dangerous. And yeah, the underlying stats, like you mentioned, Tom, are brilliant for him. Actually, It was a surprise actually to see how brilliant they were when I was sort of analysing it. But in terms of goal attempts, he's now actually second behind Mo Salah out of all midfielders with 53 compared to Salah's 68, so more than Hazard, who's in third with 51. For shots on target, he's actually much closer to Salah. He's had 29 shots on target compared to Salah's 32 and Kane's 32. So really, really high stats. And yeah, at 8.1, he's immediately affordable. So I think it's definitely worth bringing him in if you can, and most people should be able to afford him at that price. It's not like an £11 million player or a £10 million player where you might have to rip up your team and sacrifice one of your other players. You can bring him in quite easily. And I think I did a quick comparison actually with Martial, who a lot of people own, and Pogba's sort of XG for this season is 7.3 compared to Martial's 3.75, and he's making a minute per attempt of 26.5 compared to Martial's 50.9. So sort of double the attacking output currently. Martial's actually had more penalty box touches with 72 compared to Pogba's 51, and is creating chances more regularly with 1 every 42 minutes compared to Pogba's 56. So there is a case for Martial as well, but I think Pogba, for me, he is the Manchester United sort of midfielder to own, especially in their new upturn of form. So I hadn't owned a Manchester United player actually all season until now, and it definitely feels like time to even perhaps even double up on them.
Yeah, I mean, what was a bit of a hallmark of Solskjaer at Cardiff, which maybe he's learned from now, is there was a lot of rotation, especially around the front areas. With Pogba, you've got a player who, we use the term talisman a lot, and indeed we've done a lot of work on what that means. And I think that Pogba is, if you watch him play football, the talisman. He's the guy who makes that team work if he can be bothered to play, which he couldn't be bothered to under Mourinho, but he certainly can be bothered to under Solskjaer. And I mean, he's one of those players, isn't he, that I think you'll find, especially if you are on social media, that everybody's going to own very, very quickly. And you can see why. I mean, they've got Newcastle away and Tottenham away the next two. We may see people like myself, I've brought him in now, so he's going to get a 2-pointer without fail, maybe a red card, who knows. But he has people who are bringing him in may not see those returns immediately. So kudos to people who've had him for a while. But then Brighton and Burnley at home, game weeks 23 and 24. If he's not injured, he is going to be playing in those, and that is a fairly tasty prospect. And woe betide you if you don't own him, because on this form, that's very, very difficult to see anything other than there being a little bit of a problem there for you if you don't own them. In terms of these guys, Nick, I think it might be worth meditating on this point just slightly before we move on. They're so cheap, aren't they? And I think that we've been missing that, haven't we? We've been missing that kind of mid-priced player who is nailed and premium compared to your Richarlisons of this world or your Felipe Andersons of this world. Like, do you think that they're going to change the way that we set our teams up, because they basically represent an option which is the same as owning a Sane effectively, and you've saved how much? 2 million there by having Pogba over Sane? Like, do you think it's going to free things up and make that kind of the fact that the template may not exist for a while? It dissolved a few game weeks ago. Like, do you see a template forming in time soon with all of these options being available to people?
Well, I think the template is ever changing, isn't it? I think with Manchester City, suddenly, a few game weeks ago, Sterling was a must own and everyone owned him. Now it seems like there's no Manchester City players at all in the template. You've even got like the likes of Aguero, who are quietly sort of saying perhaps he should be in a template. You've got to watch out for some of these players. But at the end of the day, I think Pogba will very easily jump into that template at that nice price. Mo Salah will probably be template again, but we'll have to wait and see. The template dissolved because there were too many premium assets scoring each game week that you couldn't afford them all. So you couldn't say that Kane was template or Aubameyang was template or Hazard even was template. And I think it's a wait and see. It might even take a couple of injuries for a template to properly form, because I think there's one in defence, but in midfield and attack, it's very much up in the air still.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting that we've got, 2 players over 40%, and Salah and Alonso, and the rest are a little bit below that. It kind of feels like, a few people have just said on the stream as well, but maybe there isn't a template because Jerome Hughes has just said, there isn't templates. There's so many big hitters firing every week. Gasso's just said there's 2-3 templates hanging around. Like, I think there's a challenger template. There's like a high upper echelons template going on. It is a really interesting and exciting time, and don't forget that we've had so many game weeks in such quick succession that it's basically just it's kind of felt like the game's been on acid for a while, hasn't it? Almost, because things have changed and moved around so quickly that once we get back to a week between games, maybe things will kind of settle down. We will see people flocking towards those players who are doing better over the course of a longer period. I don't know. I think that it's one to wait and watch on, as you say, but equally it might be worth jumping on a few of these players. At least you'll get a bit of money towards your final wildcard player, towards your final wildcard team towards the end of the season. Right. Next question is a little bit about kind of stuck to this actually. So King BVM asked about Rashford, because Rashford went down the tunnel with a thigh strain after during the Man United Bournemouth game, and I'm going to kind of twist this question a little bit and making it into a question about mid-price forwards, because he asked, should we sell Rashford after the injury? But in terms of mid-price forwards, Nick, are there any players that you're particularly looking at and thinking are going to really be useful over the next kind of period? Because I think that they may have a role to play, especially if people are going to be selling Kane to produce the power 5 midfield that we've been seeing a lot of people wielding so far.
I think there are obviously a few options out there in that mid-price bracket. One of the ones actually which we didn't cover in Market Forces was Callum Wilson, who's been sold quite heavily, and we're seeing actually transfers for Jimenez and Rashford, but Wilson hasn't actually returned since game week 15. I guess a few people are starting to lose patience with him as an option, but I think Jimenez is definitely the one to still keep an eye on. He's just generally been performing week in, week out for Wolves, getting lots of chances, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of goal attempts. He's right up there, competing with the likes of Kane, which, is fantastic. He's at 62 goal attempts compared to Kane's 64. And, he's only got 6 goals to his name, but there are definitely chances. And I think he's pretty much nailed on in that Wolves team as well. And then Wolves fixtures aren't too bad. I mean, mixed, I guess. They've got Crystal Palace, City, Leicester, West Ham, Everton in their next 5. But Jimenez is definitely the one I like at that sort of 6.2 price. The other one we talked about before going live actually was Danny Ings, and he's one of my men at the moment. But I'm a bit worried about Ings, to be honest. I'm a bit concerned. He only played 61 minutes against West Ham, 64 against Huddersfield, and not at all against Manchester City. And they've got Chelsea up next. So I think he's definitely one to watch out at the moment. A little bit worried about his game time. But, he is dirt cheap, which is what I like about Danny Ings. He only cost me 5.5 million. Yeah, so, that kind of outlay in terms of my attack. I've got Aubameyang, but I've got, Danny Ings and Success, which only cost me a total of 10 million. And that really gave me sort of that money to invest on those other midfielders. So I think Ings is definitely one to consider, but he doesn't seem to be the right guy to bring in maybe at this moment in time. And then, of course, there's Mitrovic. He's been a bit of a troll this season, but he's still worth sort of considering, I think. The underlying stats have been pretty decent for him. And, he does look a danger, and he does look like he could score any time, but he doesn't score half the time as well.
Yeah, and he needs the service, doesn't he? I think that the two. I mean, with Callum Wilson, there's an interesting thing there, isn't there? Because I think over the first 10, 11 game weeks of the season, absolutely essential. That guy was on fire. We've seen a bit of a downturn recently, and that has coincided with the fixtures. He and Bournemouth both seem like fixture-sensitive teams. Who knew? I mean, they've got Watford, Everton, and West Ham the next 3. So perhaps if you were looking to sell Kane to try to make a Salah or Hazard move, he could be the man to bring in. But I think, it's looking really like Jimenez or Ings are the two. I mean, Wolves actually, after the Man City game in game week 22, embark on a run with it. They don't play any of the top 6 until game week 30 when they play Chelsea. After Man City in game week 22, they've got Leicester in game week 23, followed by West Ham, Everton, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Huddersfield, and Cardiff. The Huddersfield and Cardiff looking quite good back to back again. The issue with Jimenez, of course, is that Wolves, with all their financial muscle, could well bring in a player during the winter transfer window, which would completely make him end up, job sharing, which would diminish his attractiveness very, very quickly. With Ings, it's the other case. I mean, I know you're worried about his minutes, but I think the reality is that he's coming back from a backlog of serious injuries, had another injury recently, and he's been given the 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 80 minutes, and Hasenhüttl is really giving Saints the time, isn't he, to bed in with his particular high pressing gegenpress Klopp-like Austrian version of a German system. And after Chelsea, you know, they do have again another little run where they, between game weeks 22 and 26, don't play a top six team, and those are really important for these players. Like with these guys, they're not particularly fixture proof. I mean, every now and again you do get a Mahrez character, you get a Josh King character, you know, the sort of guy who you can play in every game, probably going to be okay. With these sorts of guys, yeah, you'll get a goal occasionally, like Wilson scored against Man City. But looking at the fixtures and looking out for these guys is very important, as we saw in Talisman Theory, and the next one in Talisman Theory that we predicted is going to be looking good. Actually, Ings between 22 and 26. So there could be something there. And in terms of utility, the price is so good for a Danny Ings. Is it 5.7, 5.8 he is now? I think you bought him in a little bit earlier.
5.6 at the moment,
5.6.
so he is very cheap. I think in terms of Rashford, it's definitely a sort of watch and wait for the press conference before making any decisions. He does seem like very good value for what he's offering, 7.2. But then there is also that threat of Lukaku, who's coming back from injury, and I'm not going to say he's looking fit, but you know, it's looking like a danger in terms of Rashford's minutes, and so we could see some rotation with Rashford. But I think, yeah, definitely in terms of that forward position, we've been saying it all season, but there's really not that many people to pick from. You've only got a choice of about 6 or 7 sort of likely lads. Firmino now being the 7th of that batch after his hat trick, but you know, we will probably see some more players reclassified next season. Richarlison probably is a definite. He's going to be reclassified as forward, and Mo Salah as well is most likely going to be a forward next season, which will definitely mix things up a little bit in terms of who we look at and who we pick. But at the moment, a lot of people have been going, you know, quite cheap and up front, myself included, and investing in midfield, which I think is worth the strategy.
Exactly. I mean, I think next season what's going to be interesting is to see those guys actually upgraded. I think you're looking probably at Richarlison, what, 8 million, 8.5. Looking at Salah, obviously matching Kane and being the same sort of price. Because this year, what we have had is we've had a bit of a deficit in options between a certain price bracket. So you had your Vardy at 9, yeah, Firmino at 9.5,
Yeah, I think so.
Lacazette sitting around 9.5. Below them, what have you got? You've got Morata, you've got Giroud. And then it went all the way down from there, all the way to 7.0 of Arnautovic and Zaha. So that meant that you were forced into kind of a two fairly big guys, like a really premium, mid-priced and cheapy strategy, or you're forced into a 3-5-2. Like, we don't have the option of having somebody around 8.59 that's actually fairly viable. Like, Vardy has filled that role in the past, but he hasn't been able to do that this year. It might be interesting to see if Richarlison becomes that guy, because to be honest, if you do have a striker who is playing every week, which Richarlison would be, has a decent element of threat, which Richarlison does have, like, that kind of guy could really fill a lot of holes, couldn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned Arnautovic. He's definitely the other one to watch. He could potentially fill that hole again once he's comes back from injury. But so it's a bit wrong. But 7.0, he's
doing an
quite
Atomic Kitten theme though. Looking back on when we first met.
No. So, but he's still quite good value at 7.0 in terms of a sort of second or third forward for ourselves. But yeah, you're definitely right. As you know, there's not been too many options up front. You know, it's Danny Welbeck, Daniel Sturridge. So a few weird, likely men out there, but no.
Yeah, exactly. Really. I mean, you mentioned Firmino a second ago. That's probably worth just speaking about quickly. I mean, we know that he's a very streaky player. Like around Christmas last year, when we were at the FPL meetup last year, weren't we, on the Friday night when he scored a brace, and then that kind of started off a chain of events when he scored basically every week. I think he scored about 60 points in the course of about 6 game weeks. I had a good Christmas last year, and then it all fell apart then. So hopefully it's the reverse this year. But you know, could Firmino be somebody that people are looking at? I mean, I think that Mane being able to cover Salah has been debunked. But Bobby back in, if he does move back to the centre forward role, do you think that he could be somebody, especially with Liverpool's fixtures post game week 22, to look at?
I think it's the concern that he is playing deeper than Mo, and you know he's getting less points than him. So he's scored a hat trick, and that's great to see. And it might mean, you know, an uprise in form in terms of Firmino, and he starts to actually be an FPL asset again, which he has the potential to be. But I think it's definitely one to watch. For myself, I'm actually thinking about tripling up on Liverpool by getting 2 defenders as well. So, it can eat into your plans in terms of how you cover Liverpool if Firmino fills one of those 3 Liverpool slots that you have. So it's always worth considering as well. So he's not one that I'm racing to bring in. And, I would probably say it's not a good idea if you're thinking about covering Salah by getting Firmino in. But he's definitely worth considering. He's definitely an option.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was blipping on the stats, wasn't he? Over the Christmas period, he's actually a joint third for attempts with 19, and he's in the top 5, I think it is, for shots in the box with 13, level with Austria's finest Ashley Barnes. So maybe we'll see an uptick in form now. Now he's got his form back. Who knows? Links to this, it seems to be all about this sort of kind of configuration around the top. I mean, you mentioned actually, didn't you, earlier on, that since your wild card, you haven't changed your defense, or you've only changed 1 player or something mad like that?
Yeah, that's true. I was quite impressed with myself actually, because I somehow I looked at the ownership amongst the defenders and owned 5 of the top 6. So I've had Wan-Bissaka since the start of the season. I've also had Robertson since the start of the season, got Alonso in game week 3, and Doherty on my wild card, and Luca Dean's been the only one that's come in since then in game week 13, I think. So it's been a while since I've changed my defence, and it's nice to not have a problem at the back, to be honest, just to kind of have these guys sort of sitting there doing their business. I mean, there's TAA is the other one in that top 6, and he's the one that I want to bring in, but I don't know who to sacrifice actually out of the defence. I know Alonso's sort of like the talking point at the moment, but even he kept a clean sheet and got some points this game week. So, and he's the post merchant, as we keep calling him. Five post shots
mentioned on the FPL show. Indeed, I think everybody in FPL knows that he's hit the post 5 times, more than any other player. Yes, we know. We've lost so many points. Worth talking about Alonso then, Nick. We've got a few questions on him. Obviously, the most expensive player at the back, and also the highest owned player at the back. So that week, the 15-pointer does come. It's going to hurt a lot of people if they have started selling. And, I was speaking to Mars, for example, from the Three Amigos the other day, and he was saying, well, maybe it is time for me to sell Alonso. I think he did actually sell Alonso because it's time to strike a new path or whatever. Because we live in fear, don't we, of an Alonso haul. With Alonso, what are you looking at doing with him? Because that's a lot of budget, and you could turn him into TAA, and then suddenly you've got at face value, this is suddenly you've got 1.7 million to play with, or even turning him to Van Dijk, and you've got 0.4 to play with. What are your views on the lusciously locked Marcos?
So I'm not going to get rid of him in the immediate future. There are always other ways to make the money that I need for my transfers, and Alonso still is. He's not top of my sort of list of players to sell, despite the fact that he hasn't had many attacking returns. I think his last attacking return was actually in game week 11, where he got an assist against Crystal Palace. I still think the goals will come with him. He's been unfortunate. He's only scored 1 goal this season, which is unlike him, because last season he scored 7. The season before he scored 6. And every time I watch Chelsea, you see him. He's always lurking around that penalty box. He can't. It's sort of like a manager's worst nightmare, in the fact that he's like, come on, man, you've got to defend every so often, but he doesn't. He's just lurking around trying to get on the end of a cross or trying to get involved. And that's nice to see, I guess, as an owner. You always know that he's got that threat. And still, in terms of returns, he's the second highest scoring defender in the game, only 1 point behind Robertson. He's picking up those clean sheets every time Chelsea get a clean sheet, and they've had the second most clean sheets out of all Premier League teams this season, only just behind Liverpool. So, he's still getting returns from all those clean sheets, which is great to see in terms of an ownership. I mean, I could downgrade into TAA, which is an option, frees up about 1.7, but I'm not in a rush to. In terms of actual midfielders, only 3 midfielders are outscoring him, only 2 forwards are outscoring him, and all those players are about twice his price as well. So I just can't be bothered to sell him. I'm happy holding him, and I think he's got 48% ownership. So if I do sell him and miss a haul, I'm screwed, like you said. So
that's the thing.
What's the point?
I was speaking about this with David Monday. Like, you just don't get the fear with any defender apart from Alonso, do you? Like, you get the fear with a lot of players. Like, you get the fear with Kane, you get the fear with Salah. Dear God, you get the fear with Salah. Never sell Salah, kids. But you get the fear with Salah. With I don't really get the fear with Robertson. Maybe I should, but I don't. But with Alonso, you just get that kind of feeling that a 12 pointer, a 15 pointer could just be down the road. But there are loads of intrepid souls that have done the viable swap, in my view, from Alonso to David Luiz. I mean, David Luiz has actually outscored Alonso basically every week, I think, since game week 13, for example. So there definitely is value for money there. It's kind of like the premium of fear that you're paying for him, right? Like, to some extent, though, I mean, the next few for Chelsea are very, very good. Apart from Arsenal away in game week 23, which, let's be fair, that's not a difficult fixture because we can't defend at the moment, can we? But the next 5 are amazing. Like, Southampton at home, Newcastle at home, game 21 22. I'm doubling up on Chelsea there. Game 23, Arsenal away. God, I'd triple up for that. But game 24, Bournemouth away. 25, Huddersfield at
Bournemouth
home.
rubbish as well, aren't they?
Exactly,
They can't defend.
They can defend.
So you could easily see, and you could easily see sell Alonso, and he could have 3 clean sheets, maybe 4 clean sheets, a couple of goals, and an assist in those fixtures.
I know.
It's just like, and I know it's a premium, paying a premium for fear, and if you could take that gamble and say, actually, I predict the TAA will outscore Alonso in his next 5, where they've got City, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Leicester, and West Ham, but. I don't know. It's not for me, to be honest. I'm happy to hold Alonso. I think he will get returns. He's been plodding along with the occasional clean sheet in the last 5 or 6 games. And they're not too much in terms of attacking returns, unfortunately, for a long time. But it will come with him. We've seen him go on, scoring streaks before in the Premier League in the last few seasons, and he's still up there in terms of the underlying stats. He's joint top for shots for defenders alongside Doherty, and he passes the eye test. He's always in the box, creating chances, and I think for me, he's a premium defender. I'm not looking to disinvest at the moment in defence. So I'll be holding him, I think. But that's my opinion anyway.
Absolutely. It's worth giving a quick shout out to the FPL gift that is Matt Doherty. Like, what's the player that guy is? Like, if you just watch him for Wolves, he's basically playing right wing, isn't he? Like, whoever's there, Cavaliero, Costa, that guy might as well not exist. It's Matt Doherty bombing down the wing, getting in the box. Like, there were times in that Wolves game he was on the penalty spot. Like, absolutely ridiculous, that guy. Absolutely crazy. Like, he's created 5 chances in the last 6. Got an assist, obviously, this week. He's also near the top for attempts for defenders over the course of the season. I think he's near the top penalty box touches, isn't he, as well? You got obviously Sean Morrison, the juggernaut Sean Morrison, who's probably got the lowest, the most underperforming in terms of XG.
Did he just do some keep him up in one game or something in the box? I don't understand how Morrison's getting so many touches in the penalty box. But
I've absolutely no idea. I think it's every set piece is basically Camarasa just smashes it towards Morrison's face and hopes it goes in, kind of
like a slab head type character.
He's got proper Maguire / Hoof visage about him. I think Leicester must have a policy where they only get players in with massive faces. But yeah, no, it's definitely visible with Morrison. Just to digress even further, that he seems to be the main target of everything. But no, Matt Doherty, we got him at what, 4.4?
4.4, yeah.
That guy is just crazy. I find it very difficult to understand why people don't have him. If you do, obviously there's lots of players I don't have, so I'm banged to rights for missing out on essential players. But Doherty 4.4 or 4.5, 6, 7, even at his price right now, level, he's actually more expensive than Luka Dean and TAA at 5.2. But even at that price, you've got to be thinking that's value for money.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even this game week, I actually benched him this game week, but he came off the bench because Danny Ings didn't play, so I got a cheeky 5 points from him against Spurs, which was very nice. Nice little reward for me. But yeah, I mean, he's just been unbelievable, just getting goals and assists. He's just returning constantly. I mean, he's just, I'm a big fan of his. 3 goals, 4 assists so far this season, and just he's leading all the underlying stats in terms of goal threat within the box, and he's definitely a hold for me. And
absolutely,
absolute champion.
If he's injured, that's the only reason he's going to leave my team. But he's a prime seven dwarf. He's the prime of the seven dwarfs, isn't he, Doc? He's not going anywhere. Next season, what are we looking at? What,
5.5? He'll probably get PVA pricing 5.5, just unless he goes to Chelsea or something, and then he'd be 6. So,
I mean, he's not like the most skillful player at times. Like, you look at him, you watch him play, and you think, okay. But it's just the positioning, isn't it? And the fact that he bombs forward because he's got 3 at the back. That's just it. You can't put a price on that, can you? Really? Right. Back to the questions. We actually do have questions to answer, Nick. I completely forgot about them. One up top. Christopher Moffat asks us if a lone forward is an option to reach the power 5 midfield. Quite an interesting one. So Chris has got just Kane, and he's flanked him with success and disrespecting the team general camera to try to get a very, very strong 4-5-1. So I think you're looking at what Robertson, Alonso at the back, and you're looking at what Hazard, Salah, a Man City player, probably Felipe, and then a Pogba or something like that in your midfield. Like, do you think that's viable, given the fact that we've spoken about the lack of value in the striking option?
Well, presumably he's got someone like AWB as well in his team, and the problem with that, I think, going sort of a Kane camera success or Aubameyang camera success front line is it does really weaken your bench at the end of the day, because camera, I mean, he has been playing a little bit, probably not going to be playing after his latest team row, whatever happens. Success seems to be out of the team again. Deeney seems to be back in, so I think with that. With that sort of front line, you do have a really sort of rubbish bench at the end of the day, and it does put you at risk, I guess, of fielding a 10-man team or getting those camera -1 points off the bench or something like that. So at the end of the day, I think it's a strategy, but I would still probably try. I mean, I've got a pretty weak front line of sort of Aubameyang, Ings success, like I mentioned, but I would still try and find an extra million somewhere to just invest it in your front line, just so you've got someone at least that's relatively competent that can come off the bench or play when required. And Jimenez again isn't that much more expensive, about 1.8 million, that you should be able to fund from somewhere by sacrificing. Like Pogba can give you a power 5, but not a too expensive power 5, and Richarlison and Felipe Anderson as well, and you're not looking at too weak a team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were talking about the very start of the season, weren't we? About the fact that you've got the value at the back, further back that you go, a lot in the positions, you've got more value. And Doherty, 4.4, and Camera 4.3. Look at the value difference there between the two players. It's in different stratospheres almost. With United, I guess you might already kind of, the general results just said this actually as well, that with the United resurgence, and you have a Martial at 7.3 and you have a Pogba at 8.1, those could be players who do return points per million above the sort of baseline that would mean that you have a power 5 midfield anyway, which probably means that you're able to fit in a better player than somebody like Success or Camera, maybe having an Ings there at the very least. I do think Ings is going to be all right towards the end of the season, to be honest. A couple more kind of prosaic questions towards the end then. FPL logic. Benoit asks, is there any logic to FPL? What do you think, Nick? Is there any logic? Am I a logical person? Am I doing well? No.
I don't know.
Are you a logical person? Yes, you are. Are you doing well? Yes.
Well, I had a thought about this question. I thought, one of the most famous and most popular logical games out in the world is chess. And I've been following Magnus Carlsen actually a little bit this season. He's chess grandmaster, number one ranked player in chess in the world. Amazing chess player, obviously. And he's actually bossing it in terms of FPL as well this season. He's up to 244th in the world, sort of showing a strategy of no mercy with some of his FPL assets. He brought in Dean for his 17-point haul in game week 18. In game week 19, he got in Rashford and Pogba, and he's got 96 points, 77 points in the last couple of game weeks. And I think you could say there's no logic to FPL. It's all we're very whimsical and we're all down to luck. But when you see this kind of guy sort of come into the scene and just dominate from the offset, and other sort of world-class managers, Mark Southerns, massive example. I think there's a clear indication that there is some logic, and these guys, very logical players, very intelligent players, are clearly making the right decisions to sort of dominate and boss it to a certain extent.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I work in financial services. I work in stocks and other financial instruments, which I will not go into here. And a lot of the time, the best traders, the people who make a shed load of money on the markets, are those people who are coldly analytical, looking at the numbers, completely devoid of emotion, like looking at, we talk about our FPL players as assets a lot. I think a lot of people do look at their FPL players and look at them as players and say, "Oh, I really like him. He's great. Like, Pogba's fantastic.
Got a nice smile.
I love the way he dances when he scores." And you look at players and you think, "Oh, Callum Wilson, what a troll!" As a FPL chancer Dan has just said. Like, we look at these players like that, and maybe there is some merit or something in looking at players as literally just game pieces, game elements, and thinking, "Oh, okay, who's going to outperform their utility, who's going to do better than that?" And that seems to be the way that Carlson's done it almost.
He's viewing them as chess pieces. He's got his bishop, he's got his knight, he's got his queen and king, and he's moving them around the board, and he's getting putting them into the right places at the end of the day. So he's doing excellent, isn't he?
Yeah, I'd assume as a chess player he's got quite a checkered history, but
that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible.
Oh dear. Well, I'm guessing he's winning FPL in 38 moves. Right. The final question of our written questions before we wrap up this for a kind of to close the pod, and then we'll kind of just be here and mess around for a bit. Is on H2 target. So our mate FPL Awesomeo asks us who are our top targets for the new year. So this is obviously the New Year's Eve at the end of, for me, a horrendous year of FPL. For you, Nick, a very very successful year of FPL, and Isaac's successful year of FPL. Hold the Baileys. Who are our top targets for the new year? Who are you looking at, Nick, at bringing in? And maybe if you could give me as well, maybe a player who could emerge over the course of the year, rather than just telling me Hazard or something.
Well, yeah, I think Hazard would be the one that I'm planning on bringing in, which of course probably going to be derailing my season, because whenever I bring him in, he just punished me. So I think Hazard probably the one that I'm bringing in. I mean, Son I'll have to be selling anyway, and Chelsea's fixture run does concern me, but we have to think about it, to be honest. Now you've set me a bit of a question, and like emerging players, there's obviously lots of young talent out there, like Phil Foden at Manchester City, but I don't think he's going to be seen too much in terms of this particular campaign. I'm trying to think now, actually. Do you want to go first and maybe come back to me, or do you have anyone?
Yeah, well, I do love to leave you flailing, but no, I'll come in. I think it's interesting to look at players who are undervalued and perhaps could emerge over the course of the season after having a bit of a stop-start H1. Players like that are Christian Eriksen, for example, 9.3, El Dele Alli, 8.9, and those sorts of players who, for whatever reason, haven't been the template, haven't really been in our thoughts too much. I mean, that was probably why I was looking at Kevin De Bruyne. The risk of those players is writ large with buying Kevin De Bruyne, because obviously they're coming back from something, which means they're probably not going to be ready to go just yet. But when these players do get in their stride, you might, if you can spot them early and jump on them early, get quite a lot of value out of them. You've even got, like, dare I say it, a player like Mesut Ozil at 8.0. Arsenal, I noticed this earlier, actually have a great run in. So after Man United in game week 30, between game week 31 and 38, we don't play any of the top 6 teams, double game weeks permitting, of course. But if he decides that he can't bother to play them, fair enough. But over that sort of period, you could be looking at a player like him and thinking, well, that might be a really good little differential if he does come back and comes in.
Yeah, I don't know about Ozil. I think Eriksen and Ali definitely are interesting cases. Ali is actually a player that I have been considering in terms of because I'm going to be selling Son, and I'm thinking maybe I can't afford Kane, and Spurs do have a brilliant fixture run, so it'll be good to get Ali in. Perhaps Lucas Moura, perhaps as well, will step up to the plate in Son's absence. He's pretty kindly priced. I think in terms of emerging talents, transfers as well. Like Camarasa and Billing look really good as well at 4.5 million. Billings actually hit the post almost as many times as Alonso this season, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on. And they don't play for great clubs, so it might be that it's not really their season, but they move on in the summer. Gylfi Sigurdsson's another great player that's always worth monitoring. He's fourth for goal attempts out of all midfielders with 47. He's also a very creative player. He's on a lot of set pieces for Everton. He's a player that I had at the beginning of the season, was smashing the metrics, but not getting me any attacking returns. But he's definitely one to always keep an eye on as sort of like a kindly priced midfielder.
Yeah, fair enough. I think for me, as a no Salah owner, there's an obvious answer. It's probably going to have to be Mo Salah. If I'm looking at any other player, Hazard needs to come in too. I think what might be interesting is monitoring City, because the pendulum has swung away from them at the moment. As you pointed out, I think on our Slack earlier on, after Liverpool, they've got Wolves at home, Huddersfield, Newcastle away, and Arsenal at home. That's a decent little run. And then from game week 28 all the way until game week 35, again, blanks and doubles for missing. They've got a nice run, which only has a Manchester derby in game week 31 in the middle. So that's 7 games where they don't play anyone in the top 6. Again, that could be a period where we're looking at Man City players and thinking, bye. Right. So just to come to the end here, then, Nick, who's your captain next week going to be?
I've got in Aubameyang at the moment.
You bought it? Did you buy? No, you didn't buy him. You haven't got Kane, have you?
I haven't got Kane, so it's a relatively easy decision for me. I mean, I could go for Heung-min Son, I could go for Pogba, but nah, I'm going to stick with the forward. I still think that Fulham are probably the worst defence in the league, despite a random clean sheet, which meant that Tim Ream was in the team of the week. But if that's even his name, I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, Tim Ream. Things going to get better.
Yeah. So I still think, and Aubameyang had a shocker as well this game week as well. He's barely touched the ball, but I still think he's going to be my captain. I reckon he's going to smash it. So yeah, I'm going for him.
If you bring it, so for me, I've brought in Hazard now. I've got Aubameyang, and it's very, very close run thing between those two. With Giroud injured, oh wow, okay, it's a big sigh at my Hazard buy.
No, thinking about it.
Yeah,
I'll be too scared to captain Hazard, but that's perhaps me playing non-logical, and I've got logic behind it all, and actually Hazard is the best option. So.
Yeah, Nicholas Carlson over here. I think it's a close run thing between those two. I think because Aubameyang was taken off 70 minutes. I think it's probably going to be okay for Fulham. Quick note, by the way, I wouldn't be too surprised at all to see Unai Emery go for the Europa League. Very, very hard. I just wouldn't be shocked by that at all, because I don't think that we've got much of a chance of getting into top 4 this year. I mean, obviously, I hope we do, but I don't think we are going to. And I think that as a serial Europa League winner with Sevilla, I think that he will be really looking at that as a route for the Champions League for Arsenal. So I think that keep your eyes peeled once the European competitions kick in again around January and February for a lot of Aubameyang rotation, a lot of him playing in the Europa League, and a lot of Lacazette playing in the Premier League, which may be an option, create an option to buy Lacazette. But yeah, I don't know. It might probably between him and it's between obviously Aubameyang on New Year's Day, or Hazard, and delaying the pain until the 2nd of January. I'm not too sure yet, but at the moment it's on Aubameyang. I said on the FPL show I was going to captain Aubameyang, so maybe I should actually captain Aubameyang for the first time since Fulham. So I meant to captain him against Burnley, and I got swapped over onto Sterling, and that didn't go very well. So maybe I should just leave it now. Who knows? Just in case you've forgotten who we are, just to record the end of this, we are Who Got Resist? You can find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL, and thank you very much again for following us and liking us and putting up with everything that we write and tweet. Yeah, it's amazing to get to 18,000 followers before the end of 2018. So yeah, thank you very much for that. If you want to join our league, we are 516-441, and we will be back in game week 21 with Adam Hopcroft, which will be really, really cool to see. Adam has completely taken off this year, providing amazing stats and amazing insight into the numbers behind the game. And I know you're quite excited about speaking to him, aren't you, Nick?
Yeah, it should be a great guest to have on the pod. Really looking forward to it.
Cool. Yep. So have a happy new year, everybody, and we hope to assist you, and we'll speak to you soon. Cool. Right.
Goodbye.
Okay. We're on the pod. We're on the stream, people. Do you guys have any questions for us? Anything there? Any burning issues that me and Nick can help you with? League code is 516-441. John. I just don't know what the best thing is for captain here, Nick. It's a pain, isn't it? Do you think you're gonna?
Well, I mean, yeah, it depends, because if I bring in Hazard, then he could be a really good captaincy option for Southampton at home.
So I remember what happened in the reverse fixture as well, when he scored, and then Morata missed the first goal, didn't he? When he was put through on goal, and then he scored the second one. Yeah.
Oh God, don't remind me. Yeah, if Morata plays, then perhaps you shouldn't captain Hazard.
Morata did play that game.
I know, that's why. Well, that's the thing though. But Morata's so crap. This is if Giroud's injured, which meant that Hazard wasn't, and Pedro was injured, which meant that Hazard wasn't playing the false nine. He was sort of shuttled off onto the wing, and typically he does better in terms of FPL when he's shuttled off onto the wing. But there were, I can't remember which game it was, but there was one where I had Hazard, and perhaps I even captained him at one time this season, and Morata was also playing, and there was just so many chances. So, Hazard set up Morata for a shot, and he completely, est the bed. So, yeah, I think Morata playing actually puts me off the Hazard captaincy.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Europa League starts on Valentine's Day, interestingly, which would be a very good day for many partners out there.
We've got a lot of questions, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. So Kane or Hazard, Lionel Messi asks, who should I captain? I know that Nick's just rubbished Hazard for having Morata on the pitch, but I think between those two, especially based on the last game with Harry Kane, you've got to be really looking at Hazard there.
Well, I'll be diverse and say Kane then, just to give you no answer.
Yeah, I know. I'm just worried about Kane. As Hodgson always said, he's the best striker of the ball in the Spurs team. And I think that's definitely being borne out in where he's playing and what he's doing at the moment. It's quite worrying, isn't
it? Yeah, definitely. I think so. Tippy Tedidista asked us, should I sell Alisson? No, would probably be my answer. I mean, Liverpool have been the best defence in the league. They've had 12 clean sheets compared to, I think, Chelsea had 9, City only had 8, and Crystal Palace have actually been doing really well with 7, which means that Siggy played Guitar is perhaps a reasonable option at 4.2 as well to look at. But yeah, I think hold Alisson for now, definitely. No point selling. There's no real reason. And Jeff asked us about tripling up on Liverpool in January. Any thoughts on that? I think that's definitely a good idea. I've got Salah and Robbo at the moment, and I'm definitely thinking about the triple up, perhaps with TAA is probably the main man that I'm looking at as my third player. But you could easily make an argument for Firmino, perhaps now, even Mane, perhaps, but maybe not Mane, because I think Salah's definitely outperforming him week in, week out at the moment.
Yeah, and midfield slots are so valuable at the moment. I don't think that would quite work. Interesting question from Dan, FPL Chancer. We have a shiny new wild card now. Would either of us ever use it before the blanks and doubles? It's quite topical, isn't it, because of what I've been talking about for a little while on the Slack.
So I'm probably definitely going to be holding on to it, to be honest, at the moment. I really want to save it for the blanks and the doubles. Having that wild card in your locker really helps you with the fixtures, because the fixtures can be an absolute disaster in terms of your team might be blanking one week. You might have 3 teams blanking one week, and then they've got a double game week the next week. And obviously having the free hits adds you a little bit of flexibility in terms of how you manage these situations. But having that wild card just really helps you out. And if you use it now, you could get later on in the season, you think, oh crap, I want to make a -12 to get 15 players in the double game week when I'm playing my bench boost, and then I've got to navigate a blank the next week as well. So yeah, I think for me, you could generally sort your team out with a couple of -4s. Really, it shouldn't be that much of a car crash to merit warranting the wild card. I know you're thinking about it, but looking at your current team after your current transfers, there's perhaps only 2 or 3 moves I can really make. So
yeah. I mean, I can completely understand why you do it. I can see why, if you think that, like, for example, you're going to get a lot of value out of doing the wild card now. If you make a team which is suited to the template or the meta or how you think it's all shifting now, I can understand why you'd do it. I can understand why you'd think, oh yeah, well, I can get all these players in now, go to 0.0 and have a very, very strong side. And we're having Ben Crellin on game week 27 to talk about the wildcard strategies. And I think, on balance, what Nick's saying is right. Like, I have been looking at the early wild cards, and I have been kind of emotively thinking about, I've had a really horrible Christmas, so maybe that might be the give me a bit of fire that I need. But I think the reality is that doing it now would probably be a bit rash. I think that doing it right now would mean that around game week 30, 31, when everybody is navigating the blank seamlessly, I'm going to be sat there, having to take -4s, -8s to get, or I'm going to have to write off a game week effectively. Last year, for example, in the blank game week, you had a Mo Salah character who's got a hat trick. Everybody owned him. If I'm in that kind of situation where I've got to bring in one key player, so imagine, I don't own, Harry Kane, and Spurs have a great game week that week. I'm looking at a situation where I've got to rip my team apart if I don't own Kane to bring him in. And then the next week, it might not be a good week for him. He might not have a double game week. So then I have to rip my team apart again to get rid of him, to buy the players back that I had before. It's not really, I don't know, it really cuts off a few avenues of possible action to get rid of the wild card. Now, even though you're doing kind of poorly at the moment, as Nick said, and as many people have shown, you can fall very far very quickly. And I think there is a lot of congestion between 500, 400k, all the way up to about 50k at the moment. I don't think it's that bad. I kind of hope that it's not going to be too bad. I think you're 2 or 3 game weeks away from a decent rank, and I think that that's the way you should look at it, rather than worrying about maybe changing things. A lot of the time, if you're a competent, engaged FPL player, you do have a team which is 2 or 3 changes away from doing well, and you, like me, perhaps haven't really made the most of the marginal gains. Next question. Jeff Holt has asked, is it more important to be the more intelligent or better looking member of the duo? So, obviously, as I'm the best looking member of the duo, you should probably answer this as most intelligent man here.
Well, it'll be interesting to know Jeff's take and who he considers more intelligent and who he considers more better looking. I don't think I've really got an answer to that question.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Jeff, yeah, exactly.
Intelligence is also in the eye of the beholder. What rank, FPL Fozzie asked, would you realistically be pleased with ending on at the end of the season?
Well, I think I'd like to get a 4-figure if possible. I think that would be my target. I was on course for it last season before my second wildcard, in finishing up about 17k, which is a bit annoying because I think I peaked at about 5k or something around game week 33 or 32. So I think ideally I really like a 4-figure finish, but I think anything in the top 50k, top 25k, I'll be happy with. Anything lower than that, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah, I don't know anymore. I think maybe top 50 is going to be enough for me at this stage. I think it's just it's a pain in the backside, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's not like undoable. It's all undoable. Like, it's all like, if I play it well, if I stop taking not silly punts, but if I stop kind of trying to think too far ahead and start to go beyond the established template too far, I think it'll be okay. Like, I didn't have the game week for Huddersfield, for example, and after that I just templated up, didn't I, Nick, and then ended up at 50k.
I think he had a bit of a disaster, but it was an interesting tweet actually from Ben Crellin, which kind of says, don't worry right now if you're doing badly. He jumped from 136k to 5k in 15-16 at this point, 293k to 2k in 16-17, and 415k to 48k in 17-18, and that was through the use of his brilliant sort of spreadsheets and stuff where he navigates these blanks and doubles. And a little shout out to Ben, who's a fantastic follow on Twitter if you don't follow him already.
Really looking forward to having him on. And to be honest, if you do an early wild card like we mentioned, he's the guy to go to, and he's the guy that you need to have up on your screen while you're planning all of your moves, because he has it all he already has it all planned out. He already knows off by heart. If you ask him, when's the blank, who's playing who, what's the percentage chance of this all happening, he knows it. Absolutely incredible stuff. A poker champion, that guy. Nick Maria Holt has plumped for my good looks and your intellect.
Oh, excellent.
So I
Okay.
think that probably is feasible. Face is my fortune. And probably your brain is yours, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for you, actually. Right. Any further questions? Let's have a look here. When do we load up on Man City assets again? Michael Sweden asks.
Okay. Well, depends really. I think you have to just kind of monitor your current team and just monitor the Manchester City team as well, just to see who's playing well at the time and base it on that. It'll be quite interesting to see actually when Ben Mendy's back, because he's definitely one I would consider bringing him in when he's fit again, because he was some sort of quite the linchpin within that defence. In terms of the defence, they've been pretty freaking terrible in recent weeks. I probably wouldn't go near the defence for a long time. Sterling has been sort of their talisman this season, so he's definitely one considering. And also Aguero, definitely one to watch. If he starts smashing it, then he could easily be a straight swap for Aubameyang or Kane to bring in Aguero, but you can't really put a time on it at the moment. We're all talking about selling the Manchester City players before the Liverpool players, but like we mentioned earlier, they don't play Brighton, Crystal Palace, Leicester and West Ham, so you could easily think, oh, actually, they did really well against Liverpool and somehow won, and you think, oh, bring them all back in. So, you can't really put a time frame on it, unfortunately, at this moment in time. It's my sort of reasoned opinion.
I definitely agree with that. Like, the fact is that you've got the Champions League coming back in February. You've got City competing on many fronts. It's going to be very difficult for them to have a coherent team. And in the early days of the season, for example, we saw it happening when you had a fairly predictable set of players that you could own. I don't know whether that's going to hold out. And we know what Pep Roulette is like. I mean, maybe Villaronca, for example, throughout this entire Christmas period, there's no Man City players apart from Ederson in goal, and maybe that was the smart play.
Except get rid of Ederson.
Yeah, I think he did get rid of Ederson in the end. Actually, I don't know. I'm sure he brought an Etheridge, him being him. But it's the case of having that explosive asset, getting an 18-pointer, and then getting two didn't play 16 points, versus having a player who returns 8 points over the course of those games. That's the kind of thing that you even up. And I think that we might be looking at a period now where we don't own any Man City assets for a little while, and that's going to be quite dangerous with a few of the upcoming fixtures. And I think that maybe around, as mentioned earlier, around game week 28 is going to be the time when we will be looking at Man City players again. All right. Tom Campbell, hi Tom, has asked, do we have any plans for the pod going into the new year, or are we keeping the existing brackets great formula as it is? So what are we going to be doing next year? Well, I think the second half of the season is probably going to be fairly similar to the first, I'm afraid. It's we can do the refresh around summer and try to think about what we're going to do in the new year. Try to keep it formulaic, as you might have guessed, just for editing reasons, because it takes a bit of time for me to do it, and it's always easier so I can put it into discrete parts. I think we'll try to keep an eye on a few things. Try to keep an eye on talisman theory. Try to keep an eye on Nick's selfishness index, which is quite interesting, and we'll definitely try to have a bit of a section on that going forward. And we've got a few good guests who are due to come on as well. So we mentioned Adam Hotcroft in Game of 21. We've got Ryan from Yerma, Fantasy Yerma. Fantasy Yerma on Game 23. You've got Ben Crellin in Game Week 27. FPL Centre, Tom, who I massively recommend you guys check out. Game Week 30. We've got a provisional John C coming on in Game Week 33. And we're doing like end of year jamboree with Lee and Sam in Game Week 27. So quite a few good guests, and I think that we'll kind of stick to the format, and every week kind of look at what's going on on FPL Twitter and try to kind of figure out what you guys want us to look into. Not really a big fan of asking people what's going on. I think it's probably for us to figure out, but we'll see. And what do you think about that, Nick?
Yeah, I'd be inclined to say exactly the same. We'll probably going to be following this, the same template, and then look at the summer in terms of where we go from there. Because I think we've got some very interesting guests coming on, but the game weeks come thick and fast. So we'll continue to look at some of the stuff that we talked about, and monitor over the course of the season. As the season develops, we've always got more data to work with, which is always good from a data standpoint. I think we'll look at points per value again as well. Maybe do some articles perhaps for the site as well when we have time. But yeah, we're always a bit tight for time anyway. So the summer will give us sort of like, especially with no World Cup, actually it gives us ample time to kind of think about what our future plans are. But for now, I think the rest of the season definitely going to be following the formula. We might try and do some more Q&A sessions as well when we get the chance. Do some live streams, because I think they're proving quite popular as well. So yeah, it's quite fun to do them as well. So a little bit of that, a little bit of this, but mostly same old.
Yeah, I think this is quite useful, isn't it? A stopgap in times like this. We don't really have the time to. I mean, I'll put the bit before into a podcast kind of thing later on, but there's just no. Unfortunately, there's just kind of no. It's a waste of everybody's time, like to try to do a podcast if the next game week is in 2 days' time, 3 days' time. Like with this, I can just put a beginning on, put an end on, and that's it. Out it goes. Whereas with an actual podcast, it takes a while because the amount of time Nick swears. So it's quite difficult. Yeah, we'll try this. All right. So I guess last question then. Any more socials or anything like that plans? I think we'll try to do something around summer. Like there doesn't seem to be any established FPL meetup around summertime, so we'll try to do something like that, I think.
Yeah, I think some sort of like close of play event will probably be the next event in the diary. We try and arrange, probably in London again, I'm afraid.
Yeah, sorry guys. Unfortunately, it's not gonna work as well. We can't do something where we meet everybody in the middle. We'd probably end up in I don't know, in the Middle East somewhere, I guess, or maybe somewhere like that. Right. Okay. Thanks very much for joining today, guys. Hope you had fun. The stream will obviously be available for a while, so tell your friends if they would like to watch some people talk about FPL for a while. And thanks very much for your comments and for taking part. Right. Take care. Good luck and Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Cheers.